Is sales and marketing fixed or variable cost? You're treating marketing like the person you're not quite sure if you want to date, so you're kind of on again, off again. Most owners start cutting marketing during slow months, and then they panic because there's no business, and then they start ramping it up again. Slow down, ramp up. We got to do something different. By the end of this video, you're going to know how to budget marketing and sales, which leads to predictability. We've worked with a lot of different industries in the past, but one of our favorites is home builders. They're super fun. We call them riverboat gamblers. They just kind of take big swings and they do the best they can. And a lot of them get into it because it's not a high system thing that they think. They know how to build stuff and they're really good at it. And so they get in this business. And then once they start receiving their big $100,000, $200,000 receivable checks, that's when things start to go a little haywire. And we need to do something different, especially as it relates to marketing and sales. And so we were working with a home builder. And I started to realize about a year in that I was in this feast or famine cycle from a coaching perspective with this home builder. See, here's what would happen. He would build up his pipeline, have a ton of work, and then go all in on the operational work and completely starve marketing and sales of the work and attention it needed in order to keep the pipeline full. It was a literal feast or famine. Feast or famine over and over and over again. And so we started to do something, and instead of looking at both his time and his budget as variable, on again, off again, we started to set it up where it was a drip recurring thing. Not only did setting this discipline solve his pipeline problem, because it stayed relatively steady throughout the course of any given year, but it also helped solve his chaos problem. Here's why. Is because loads of anxiety would build up when he started to see the pipeline get thin and realize that he wasn't doing the repetitive, predictable, and meaningful, consistent work of business development, of marketing and sales. And by the way, the order of marketing and sales is important. Marketing always comes before sales. And the term business development is important because you are literally developing business. I don't want you to think of yourself as a counter salesperson at a local supply house where you're standing behind a counter and you're waiting for people to come in and take orders. That is not business development. That is order taking, and we want to get out of that mindset of order taking. All right, so your question is, should it be fixed or variable? Here's my response, but let me explain. It's actually both. What do I mean by that? Okay, let's start with marketing and our marketing system. Remember, there's separate marketing, sales, ops, and admin. Those are what we call the four core systems of every business. So in marketing, we want your expenses to be more fixed than variable. What does that mean? Well, I had a friend tell me one time that a range of marketing expense should be somewhere between 3 and 13% of what we call gross margin, or what Mike Michalowicz calls real revenue. What's real revenue or gross margin? Basically take your total revenue, subtract your cost of goods, and what's left over is gross margin. It's not profit. You still got to pay for overhead and rent and gas and all that other stuff. But it's the money you have to run the business. So let's just call it, for the sake of this discussion, real revenue. So it's not your total, it's your real. Take cost of goods out. Once you take cost of goods out, because that wouldn't be there if you didn't have work, your real revenue is what we're going to base our marketing percentage on. So a number that you can start with is just 3%. So take your total revenue minus your cost of goods, and whatever that number is, let's say it's $1 million, you want to take 3% of $1 million, and you can tab that as your marketing budget. And so you can take that 3% of $1 million, which is $30,000, divide it by 12 months, and you can set a budget for that amount of money every month that you're going to spend on marketing. Now, my friend has told me that a 3% marketing spend on your gross margin is a pretty conservative spend. So the billboard lawyers that you see all over the country, and they call all nines and call all eights and all that, if you had a wreck and you need a check and all those sorts of billboard marketing, they're usually going to be on the 13 to the 20% of their budget for that, which is crazy to think about, but that's the number one lead generation source that they're putting in there. So for you, if you want to start conservative, it's usually around 3 to 5%, and you can start there. And so that is going to be a fixed cost every month, and then once you have that, you can go click on the link of the video that I've got below, and it'll actually show you how to set up a marketing and sales strategy so you know how to deploy that money. We don't want to just earmark the money and go, hey, I got $3,000 a month to go pay somebody who wants it. There's going to be a gazillion marketers that raise their hand and go, we do this and we do this, and they don't really do anything. But that's a whole nother video for another time. What I want you to see right now is that your marketing spend and investment can be fixed, recurring every single month, and that gives you a starting point. Now, a little side hack for you that I think will be super helpful. When you have that marketing expense that you're ready to deploy, I want you to start interviewing marketers and get them down to one thing. How are they going to produce qualified leads? You do not care about impressions. You do not care about clicks. You do not care how good the website looks. What you care is qualified leads. If you have a one-page website that looks like MS-DOS from the 80s, but it generates more leads than this dynamic website and all that stuff, give me the 80s website, because you want qualified leads. That's what we're looking for. So when you're talking to marketing people, ask them this question: how can you get me to a qualified lead? And that's the metric that we're going to track. All right, now I'm going to pivot on you. I said that marketing costs should be pretty fixed, and I gave you some starter percentages. Now let's dive into some more numbers, and I'm going to tell you that sales costs should be variable. Oh my gosh, what do I mean by that? Okay, so let's dive in. So when you have a sales team member, that sales team member, the bulk of their compensation should be hooked directly to closed deals. Rarely should you have a sales team member that you're paying a consistent salary over and over and over again. Why? It's because sales needs to be motivated by the result that they're trying to achieve. Marketing needs to be oriented towards the result it's trying to receive. So you might ask the question, well, why wouldn't you incentivize a marketer around variable cost as well? Because most marketers won't even come work for you. The reality is most salespeople are more motivated by that, but they will also want a higher percentage of the closed deals if they're going to take the risk of being on a commission structure. So here's one idea for you to float. We actually have a lot of clients doing this. We do this ourselves. Is for a salesperson, you want to put them, most marketing people are going to be on contracts that you're tracking results for a fee. Salesperson or salespeople, mostly what you're going to do with them is you're going to create some creative package. And so we recommend, in a lot of cases, not all, but a 3-tiered package. Tier number 1 for a package is some sort of what we call livable base, which means they'll usually be able to pay their rent and their groceries with that livable base, but not much more. Then they have a commission structure on closed deals. And so they get closed deals. If they get a closed deal, then they get a commission. Is that a one-time check? Is it a long-term in perpetuity? You have to decide that. But then the third tier is what we call a one-time kicker tier. So you've got your base, you've got ongoing commissions, and then you've got a one-time kicker. Hey, if you close 100 deals within 3 months, you're going to get a check for $10,000 or whatever that number is. You make up your own numbers around that. So it's a variable cost with some fixed components in the sales process of it. So your question is marketing and sales a fixed or a variable cost? I would say that marketing is going to be much more drip, 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 a fixed cost that you can prepare for. There might be some variability in it, but sales is going to be largely variable with just a little bit of fixed in it as well. All right, so when we're talking about budget, because we're talking real numbers here, we're talking about budget, here's what I want you to do. I want you to start with a 3 to 5% budget on your marketing spend. So go take your total revenue, subtract cost of goods if you have it. If you're a professional services firm, you probably don't have that, but subtract cost of goods if you have it. What's left over is your real revenue. Take that, multiply it by 3 or 5%, look at that number, and then go, okay, this is what I want to deploy for anything related to marketing. That includes not only the person, it includes ad spend, it includes CRM for tracking. Anything that's earmarked to marketing is how you want to spend and deploy that money. Now, you might have to increase it if it's not enough to get you what you want. On the sales side of it, here's what I want you to look at, and this is where you're going to have to really look. But sales, you'll get a lot of salespeople to go, I want 50% of anything I sell. And you can look back at them and go, you're out of your mind for doing that. Now, there might be some people that are in a unique business where their costs aren't very much and they can do that sort of thing. But most people, it's a ripe recipe to put you out of business. So let's start differently. A lot of salespeople, if you're in a business with cost of goods, they might get single-digit commissions. And so if you're a home builder, they're going to get single-digit commissions. If you're in spray foam sales, they're going to get single-digit commissions. But there are a lot of other people who are in professional services businesses, like an architecture firm, a law firm, that they're in sales, but they're going to get a higher percentage of the close because there's no cost of goods to do with it. So here's what I want you to do, because I know some of that can be confusing. I simply want you to start with a number and then work up or down from the number. But in order to do that, you're going to have to run what they call a pro forma. The good news is for you now, you have AI. So all you need to do is run this video through AI and go, hey, this guy was talking about coming up with a sales compensation. Can you help me come up with a proper percentage of that sales compensation? And just start with the number 10. Just start at 10%. And so if you were to comp somebody 10% of a sale, what would that be? And you'll look at that and go, whoo, that is way too high. Okay, great, go down. Or you're like, I don't know that that's enough to keep a person and I can afford it. Okay, then let's go up. And so you can just start at 10 and go up or down from there. And then what you find is you'll find a good medium, but if you can tier it with a base plus a commission plus a kicker, now you're putting the ball in the court of the salesperson. So it's variable with a little bit of fixed. Hey, go click on the link in the video below. I've got a whole nother video around the topic of cash flow, but it dives in on this idea of pro formas and budgets, and that'll give you a lot of courage as you're starting to talk about these numbers for fixed or variable expense for marketing and sales. Listen, don't take marketing and sales lightly. Treat it like you would your operational and production process. Marketing is a system, sales is a system. Let's budget like it is, using fixed costs for marketing, a lot of variable costs for sales, and putting that together so you have clarity. But here's what I want you to hear from me. I want you to have fixed clarity on the numbers of whatever you're providing. So make the time to do this. Why? So that you can be liberated from chaos to make time for the things that matter most.